Hi, welcome to the world of Afirmmio. My name's Sarah and I form part of a team of business and investment strategists. My job here today is to take you on a short journey about who we are, what we do, and the benefits that we can potentially offer you. So who are we? Well, we're basically a group of financial educators. And let's just say, for example, this is you in the middle here. Now you, at some point in your life, are going to require the services probably of a financial planner if you're working on your superannuation or your self-managed super or insurances, or maybe some tax reduction strategies. You're going to need a finance broker or your own bank. You're going to need probably the services of a real estate person, regardless of whether you're renting or have your own mortgage, which also means that you'll need an accountant, a solicitor, and if you have your own business, maybe even a business advisor. Now, 9 times out of 10, most of these professionals out in the marketplace don't know each other. And so you as the individual in the middle here are required to have some kind of understanding of all of these aspects in order to make sure that your personal estate grows effectively. Now, let's just give you an example. If you were to purchase an investment property, you'd need the services of a real estate person. Well, you'd probably also need to deal with a finance broker or your own bank. You'd also then need a solicitor, which tends to mean that you'd also need an accountant thereafter, because there would be some tax advantages and how you're set up correctly with that. Now, what we do, which is very different to what happens out there in the marketplace, is we actually have these whole army of professionals that work together to piece together your personal estate to make it effective. So if I just explain from here, on the educational side of things, you may have heard of the iceberg theory. And the iceberg theory can actually be tailored to all different areas of life, but it usually goes that you've got one slightly smaller iceberg and then you've got a much bigger one. Now, all of us at whatever point in life we're at, we're always striving to try and get up to be the bigger iceberg, to be bigger, to be more financially well off, to develop perhaps in a sport, or a very good example is perhaps some celebrities that are out there. Quite often they start down here and they may get a couple of big breaks, which helps them actually move up to here. But what tends to happen out there in the ocean is storms come along, and you can't avoid that no matter what you do. And when storms come along, it makes this iceberg really shaky. And if this iceberg here doesn't have a solid foundation underneath it, this is going to crumble. Quite often that happens to a lot of celebrities out there because they haven't actually developed underneath here. They haven't been able to develop the foundation that they need to cope with the success that they're now receiving. How we relate that to the financial world, in that if you don't have the financial education down here underneath the iceberg, it doesn't matter how big you are up here, you will always crumble. Our role within our company is to help you build under here the foundation, help you change your beliefs about money, your thoughts, and educate you so that you financially can grow up and be very solid in what you're doing and not go bankrupt. So to give you an example of this, and you can probably calculate this at home, but we're going to use an example of Bob and Mary. Now, Bob and Mary are your normal everyday couple, and Bob is 45 and Mary is aged 40, and they actually have 2 kids. Now, the government is going to currently tell Bob that he can retire at age 65. In actual fact, by the time Bob gets there, it's going to be more like 70, maybe 70 plus. But we also know that 93% of Australians are going to retire on the government pension. Now, I'm assuming that most of you don't want to be those people. Why? Well, because it's usually not enough to survive, unless, of course, you're happy to eat dog food in your retirement. Why is it then that people like Bob and Mary, who have probably earned very significant incomes over their lifetime, end up here? Well, if we space out to age 85, and let's say they've got 20 years in retirement here. Now Bob over here has 130,000 sitting in his superannuation fund. He still has 20 years left of working life, and Mary has actually been a stay-at-home mum bringing up the 2 children. Fairly common scenario out there in the marketplace right now, but what it means is that Bob and Mary are both going to have to use Bob's super to retire on. Now, based on this scenario, Bob earns $100,000 per year. But Bob also pays $20,000 to the tax man. So in essence, he brings home clear $80,000 a year. But if we times 100 over 20 years, Bob is going to make $2 million. That $2 million is what we would call Bob's and Mary's seed. And what they do with that seed is going to determine whether they actually build a nice prosperous garden or whether they actually build weeds or grow weeds. Now, out of that $2 million that comes in, Bob and Mary also have a house down here that they have a mortgage on. Great Australian dream is to have your own home and to generally try and pay it off as quick as possible. Now, the value of this house down here is $530,000, and Bob and Mary owe $350,000. Okay, so it's not too much. It's a fairly reasonable amount, but in today's market, that's actually not too bad. Now, of course, they're paying principal and interest on that loan because they want to pay it down as much as they can, and they're paying 4.8% interest on that, which the repayments then equal about $2,207 per month out of their income that they're going to need to pay to bring that mortgage down. Now, the interesting part about this is these guys still have 21 years left on the term of that mortgage. So if we times out the monthly repayment times 12 times 21 years, that actually gives us a grand total of $556,000. So that's quite a big chunk in comparison to the $350,000 that they actually owe to the bank. So if we take this up here to the seeds that they have, let's actually figure out where their seed is going to go. So for these guys here, 20k a year in tax over the next 20 years is going to be $400,000 going out in tax. But we also know that out of that $2 million, these guys are going to pay $556,000 out to the bank to try and pay their home, so that almost by the time that Bob comes to retire, they will be mortgage free. Now, let's have a look at this. Out of the $2 million that Bob has coming in over the next 20 years, over $1 million of that is going to go out to these two here, which then leaves, let's say, $1 million over here for Bob and Mary to live off over the next 20 years, and also to try and get $1 million over here in their super to merely provide them with $50,000 a year to live off in retirement. Now, you don't need to be a maths genius to know that these figures just don't add up. So what we actually do here at Afirmmio is we bring in all of the army of professionals and we create financial solutions for the Bob and Marys out there, or the people who have hundreds of thousands of dollars already in investments that perhaps aren't being effective, but right down to the people who are just starting off in life and want to get ahead. We can actually work with Bob and Mary to try and reduce a lot of these things in here and bring some money back into their pocket that they can then leverage from to create a better life for themselves. If you would actually like to know how to do this for yourself and figure out your own personal estates, The contact details will be coming up in the next couple of slides. There are some testimonials that you'll be shown on the next slide. Please take time to have a read over those. They are some of our clients that we've worked with and helped out, and we will continue to work with over the next 10 years. The end.